In the ancient kingdom of Elvaria, nestled between silver mountains and endless skies, there lived a young girl unlike any other. Her name was Alindra, the only daughter of Queen Seralith and King Mavrin. The royal blood in her veins carried more than noble lineage, it carried the mark of dragons. From the day she was born, the signs were clear. Her eyes shimmered like molten gold, slit like those of a dragon. The midwives gasped and stepped back, whispering of old legends that spoke of humans born with the dragon sight, a gift that hadn't been seen in 1,000 years. Her parents, though proud and kind rulers, grew fearful. Elvaria was a kingdom that had once warred with dragons. Though the great beasts had vanished to distant lands, their memory lingered like smoke after fire. People feared dragons, and they feared anything that resembled them, even a little girl. So, to protect her and the throne, King Mavrin made a difficult choice. She must stay in the eastern wing, he told the queen. Let the people believe she is fragile, unwell. It is better than letting them fear her. Queen Seralith wept but agreed. And so, Alindra grew up within the high walls of the eastern tower, surrounded by silk curtains, golden books, and a world no wider than her window. But Alindra was not sad. She was curious. She would stare out the window for hours, watching the clouds drift and the birds soar. Her heart beat faster whenever she saw the mountain peaks in the distance. They called to her like ancient drums. What lies beyond those hills, Mira? She once asked her nursemaid. The Dragon Mountains, Mira said cautiously. But forget those tales. Dragons are gone, child. You must stay where it's safe. But Alindra's heart did not forget. Each night, she would sit by the pond in the palace gardens, staring into the water. Her eyes, golden glowing, stared back, reminding her of everything she was, and everything she wasn't allowed to be. One night, when the moon was high and the garden was silent, she whispered to her reflection, "Why am I different? Why do I feel something burning inside, like a fire I can't put out?" And to her surprise, the water began to shimmer. A low hum echoed through the garden. The air trembled. Then a soft voice whispered through the wind, "Because you are not just a princess. You are a bridge between two worlds, one of man, and one of flame." Alindra gasped and turned, but there was no one behind her. Just the rustling leaves and moonlight. From that night on, something changed. She began to notice things others didn't, the flicker of fire in her hands when she touched sunlight, the way birds paused in flight when she sang, and how the garden plants leaned toward her when she passed. She began to feel her strength, not in sword or shield, but in heart and spirit. But the truth could not stay hidden forever. On her 16th birthday, the nobles gathered for a banquet. For the first time, Alindra was allowed to walk among them. Dressed in silk robes with a veil over her face, she entered the great hall, her hands trembling. The whispers began immediately. "She's beautiful. Is that the princess? Why is she veiled? She's never been seen before. Why now?" But all of that faded when a gust of wind blew through the hall, lifting her veil. The hall fell silent. Hundreds of eyes turned toward her golden, glowing dragon eyes. Someone dropped a goblet. A child screamed. "She's cursed," shouted a nobleman. "She has dragon blood." Chaos erupted. Guests backed away. Guards stepped forward. But Alindra stood tall. For the first time in her life, she did not hide. "I am not cursed," she said. Her voice echoed like thunder. "I am not a monster. I am Alindra of Elvaria, and I will no longer live in fear of what I am." The queen tried to calm the court, but the fear had taken root. That night, as the castle hushed in unease, Alindra stood once more by the garden pond, tears in her eyes but fire in her heart. "I cannot hide forever," she whispered. "If I am a bridge, then I must find the other side." A faint glow shimmered beneath the surface of the pond. A single, crimson scale floated up from the deep and landed in her hand. And then she knew. The dragons were not gone. And they were calling her home. The scale pulsed in Alindra's hand like a tiny heartbeat. Its surface shimmered between red and gold, warm as sunlit stone. She clutched it tightly and turned to the wind, whispering, "Where are you leading me?" That night, she packed a satchel with essentials, a book of dragon legends, a loaf of bread, a flask of water, and the scale wrapped carefully in silk. She wore a dark cloak to blend with the shadows, and before dawn, slipped out of the eastern wing where she had spent her entire life. The palace slept. Even Mira, her nursemaid and the only one who would have tried to stop her, was fast asleep beside the fire. Alindra moved quietly through the courtyard, past the rose gardens and marble statues, and followed the narrow path eastward, toward the mountains she had dreamed about since childhood. But she did not travel far. Just beyond the castle walls, Hidden behind a curtain of willow trees, stood an old, forgotten structure, a tower of black stone, wrapped in curling vines that glowed faintly red. Smoke curled from its peak, twisting into the crescent moon above. Alindra had never seen this place before. "Why have I never noticed it?" she whispered, stepping closer. "I've walked this path 100 times." As she reached the door, her dragon scale began to glow. The runes on the stone doorway pulsed in rhythm. Her breath caught. This is magic." A voice echoed in her head, gentle, ancient, powerful. "You are ready." The runes shifted and rearranged, revealing an opening. The heavy stone door swung inward with a groan. Inside, the air was warm and thick with the scent of smoke and ancient scrolls. Flames danced along the walls without burning them, casting golden shadows. A staircase spiraled upward, seemingly endless. Alindra began to climb. Each step felt like a memory rising from the ashes. The walls were carved with images of dragons, soaring, speaking, and even standing beside humans as equals. The deeper she went, the more she understood. This tower was not built by her people. It was built with dragons. Finally, she reached the top chamber. The room glowed with a soft, golden fire. In the center stood a pedestal, and upon it, a glowing orb, smooth as glass, filled with swirling flames. Alindra approached slowly. As she reached out, the orb flared to life. A voice, clear and deep, spoke from within. "Daughter of fire, you who carry the sight, why have you come?" Alindra's voice trembled, but she stood tall. "Because I am different. Because the world fears me. Because I feel something inside me that burns brighter than fear." The orb pulsed. "You are not cursed, Alindra. You are chosen. This tower is the legacy of the dragon guardians, humans who once lived in harmony with our kind. You are their descendant, and your time has come." A burst of heat enveloped her. The flames from the orb leapt forward, swirling around her body. Her cloak vanished. A new robe of silver and crimson flame settled over her shoulders. The dragon scale on her chest flared and embedded itself in the fabric. And then, the fire faded. Alindra stood in silence. Her body tingled with energy. Her heart raced, but she felt no fear. Only power. And purpose. The orb's voice returned, softer now. "Your gift is not to destroy, but to restore. The dragons have been waiting. But you must prove yourself. Beyond the tower lies the path to Firewind, the last of the elder dragons. Find him. Only then will your destiny unfold." Suddenly, the chamber shook. A thunderous roar echoed from the distance, low and ancient. The orb flickered. "Go now, Princess of Flame. The world begins to stir." Alindra turned and ran down the spiral stairs, her new robe glowing faintly in the dark. As she stepped outside, the vines on the tower began to retreat, curling into the stone. The door closed behind her and vanished completely, leaving only grass and silence. She stood under the night sky, clutching her satchel. The wind smelled different, charged with magic and ash. From the north, far beyond the hills, came another roar. Not of warning, but of welcome. The sun had barely risen when Alindra reached the edge of the forest beyond the palace grounds. The morning mist hung low, curling around the trees like slumbering spirits. Birds chirped in uneasy silence, as if they sensed a force moving through the woods, something old, powerful, and awakening. Alindra followed a faint trail, guided by the warmth in her chest. The dragon scale sewn into her robe glowed faintly, tugging her forward like a compass of flame. She walked deeper into the forest, past trees older than any building in the kingdom, until the air began to thicken, not with fear, but with presence. She stepped into a circular clearing and stopped. At its center stood a stone altar, half buried in moss and vines. Above it hovered a gemstone, shaped like a dragon's heart, glowing with a swirling core of crimson and gold. The light shimmered with each breath she took. Alindra stepped closer. The stone pulsed. Boom, boom, boom. It beat like a living heart. She reached out. The moment her fingers brushed the glowing surface, a surge of warmth coursed through her body. Images exploded in her mind. Dragons soaring through ancient skies, humans riding beside them, laughter and fire entwined in harmony. Then came fire, war, betrayal, screams. A queen with eyes like hers casting a spell to hide the dragon stone, until the one born with dragon eyes returned. Alindra fell to her knees, gasping. The stone's voice echoed in her thoughts. "You are the awakener. The bond is restored. The age of silence ends with you." Tears stung her eyes, not from pain, but from clarity. "I am not a curse," she whispered. "I am a key." A sudden blast of wind rushed through the clearing. The trees bent backward, not in destruction, but in greeting. The light from the dragon stone flared, and then, slowly, began to shrink. It descended into her hands and transformed into a small pendant, warm and pulsing, which fastened itself beside the scale on her robe. Then the ground trembled. A voice echoed from the edge of the forest, deep, ancient, and rumbling like thunder. She carries the fire of old. Alindra turned slowly. Emerging from the shadows was a massive figure, scales like sunlit bronze, wings folded against his sides, golden eyes burning with wisdom. A dragon, Firewind. Her breath caught. Every tale she'd read as a child had described dragons as monsters, feral beasts of destruction. But standing before her was something far more majestic. He radiated age and knowledge, strength tempered by sorrow. He lowered his head. You are Alindra, daughter of Sarilith and Mavrin, but you carry a lineage older than kings. I felt your fire stir the stone. You have awakened the bond. Alindra stepped forward. I've been told I'm a bridge between your kind and mine. But I don't yet know how. Firewind's eyes narrowed gently. Then it is time you learned. He lowered his wing, and with trembling hands, she climbed upon his back. The instant her fingers touched his scales, she felt it, a rush of power and memory and emotion. They rose into the sky, bursting through the trees into the open heavens. The wind howled in her ears, but she felt no fear. Only freedom. Below them, the land of Elvaria stretched like a map of possibilities. Firewind spoke as they flew. Our kind once lived in harmony. But fear grew in human hearts. They forgot our song and remembered only our fire. We withdrew, and the bond was lost. Alindra looked at her pendant. Until now. Yes, he rumbled. But not all will welcome your return. There are those who fear what you are, and one who wishes to control it. A shadow passed over the sun. Firewind's voice darkened. Beware the betrayer of Emberfall. Once a guardian, now a hunter of dragons. He seeks the dragon stone to awaken a power that could consume all. Alindra's heart clenched. Who is he? You will know him when the fire turns cold. For now, you must train. The fire within you is awake, but untamed. Firewind banked toward the mountains. Come, Princess of Flame. Your journey has only begun. The wind was sharp and clean as it rushed past Alindra's face. She clung tightly to the golden scales of Firewind's neck, her heart pounding with awe. Beneath them, the land unfolded like a storybook. Lush forests, towering mountains, and winding rivers shimmered in the dawn light. Firewind soared higher, his massive wings carving through the clouds like blades of fire. You were born for the skies, he said, his voice deep and steady through the bond that now linked them. Do you feel it, Alindra? The wind, the sky, it answers your flame. She nodded, breathless. It feels like home. They dipped low, gliding through a narrow mountain pass. Birds scattered at their approach, and the sun began to rise over the eastern peaks, painting the world in gold and amber. Alindra had never felt so alive. So this is what it means to be free, she whispered. Firewind rumbled in agreement. But freedom must be earned. The skies hold beauty, but also danger. You must learn to trust yourself. He began to descend into a wide valley tucked between two massive ridges. Nestled in the center was an ancient temple, its roof overgrown with moss, dragon statues guarding its crumbling gates. The Sky Temple, Firewind said as they landed. Once, this was the training ground of the Dragon Guardians. Here, you will learn what your fire means. Alindra dismounted, her boots crunching on stone as she approached the gates. The moment her hand touched the arch, the symbols carved into the stone walls flared with golden light. The doors creaked open, revealing a vast courtyard surrounded by old statues, humans and dragons standing side by side. It's beautiful, she breathed. Firewind nodded solemnly. Few remember what it once was. But your coming has stirred the ancient wards. The temple awakens for you. For the next several days, Alindra trained. Under Firewind's guidance, she learned to summon the flame within her, not to destroy, but to guide, to heal, to protect. Her hands could now conjure warmth, light, and even sparks of fire. She meditated beneath the sky tree, a tree said to be planted by the first dragon rider, and listened to the wind as it whispered secrets only she could hear. One afternoon, while practicing near the temple's waterfall, she lost control of her power. She tried to shape a flame into a bird, but the fire surged wild. It shot toward a tree, igniting its branches. No, she cried, panicking. She ran toward it, thrusting her hands out. Her heart raced, and tears welled in her eyes. But the moment her palms reached out, the fire dimmed, and vanished. The leaves shimmered, unharmed. She fell to her knees, gasping. Firewind stepped beside her. You fear your power, but fear gives it fangs. You must believe in it. Fire, like the heart, responds to intention. Alindra looked at her hands. I'm trying, but what if I'm not strong enough? You are not alone, he said gently. I chose you because you carry both fire and grace. The world needs both. That night, Alindra stood atop the temple tower, watching the stars. She held the dragon stone pendant in her hand and whispered, "What comes next?" As if in answer, a streak of fire shot across the night sky, a signal. From far across the mountains, smoke rose into the stars. Firewind landed beside her, wings folded. They've found us, he said grimly. The betrayer sends his hunters. Alindra's heart pounded. I'm ready, she said. No, Firewind replied. Not yet, we must fly. There is one more place you must go, where the flames remember everything. He extended his wing. Alindra climbed on. As the first light of dawn cracked the sky, they rose once more, higher and faster than before. The world below shrank, but her courage grew. They flew into the wind, into the unknown, and behind them, deep in the forest, a dark figure watched their ascent from the shadows. His eyes gleamed red, and in his hands, he held a shard of fire that pulsed like the heart of a dragon, but cold as ice. The kingdom of Elvaria had not slept in days. Whispers of Alindra's disappearance had spread like wildfire. Some said she'd been kidnapped by rebels. Others claimed she had turned into a dragon herself and flown into the sky, leaving behind a trail of smoke and scorched earth. But the truth, as always, was more complicated, and more dangerous. In the palace throne room, Queen Saralith sat with her back straight and her expression cold. Before her stood her council, nervous, divided, and loud. She has dragon blood, one nobleman barked. You saw it yourself. Her eyes burned like fire. This was always going to happen. Enough, Saralith said sharply. Alindra is my daughter and heir to the throne. You speak treason with your tongue. But she vanished, your majesty, said another, an older woman with trembling hands. And now the sky burns in the north. The people are afraid. The queen's fingers tightened around the edge of her armrest. So are we to condemn her for being born different? She has not harmed anyone. She carries the mark of the dragons, muttered one of the guards near the door. And now the old fire temple glows again. We should have destroyed it long ago. Before Saralith could speak, a servant rushed in. Your Majesty, a rider approaches the gates. Alindra, the queen gasped. The servant shook his head. No, someone else. He wears black and rides under a crimson banner. The queen's heart dropped. The betrayer. Outside the city gates, a tall figure cloaked in black rode a great silver beast, not a horse, but a drake bred for war. His face was hidden beneath a silver mask etched with dragon bone. At his side hung a staff wrapped in chains of fire. He raised a single hand, and the guards stood frozen. I bring a message, he said. His voice was like stone cracking beneath frost. From the Order of Emberfall. The captain of the guard stepped forward, wary. Speak quickly, stranger. The masked rider tilted his head. Your princess is no longer human. She has awakened the dragon stone. If you do not wish to burn with her, turn her over to us. The captain's eyes widened. You speak of treason. The rider smiled beneath his mask. No, I speak of survival. With that, he turned his drake and vanished into the mist. Back in the palace, panic spread through the halls. By nightfall, the streets of Elvaria were flooded with torches and protests. Commoners and nobles alike debated in the alleys and courts. Some chanted her name with hope. Alindra the Flameborn, she will return. Others painted dragon wings on walls and slashed them with blades. In her tower, Queen Saralith stood alone, gazing at her daughter's old room. The empty bed, the dusty book of dragon tales, the locket that Alindra had left behind. Tears welled in her eyes. She was never meant to be hidden, the queen whispered. I only wanted to protect her, from them. From this, a voice spoke from behind. She needs you to believe in her now. The queen turned. It was Mira, Alindra's old nursemaid. She held something wrapped in velvet, a scroll sealed with a golden scale. She left this, said it was for the day you would doubt. Saralith unwrapped it slowly. It was a letter, written in Alindra's careful, elegant hand. Mother, if you are reading this, I have left because I must. There is a fire inside me that you tried to hide, and I don't blame you. But I am no longer afraid of what I am. The dragons are not our enemies. They are part of our past, and maybe our future. If I am to have a place in this world, I must find it myself. I will not hide anymore. I will return when I can stand in the light, and not in shame. Saralith's tears fell freely. She clutched the letter to her chest. My daughter, she whispered. Be safe. Outside the palace, the flames of fear and hope continued to battle in the hearts of the people. But across the mountains, the true war was only beginning. In the shadows of Emberfall, the betrayer stood before a map of Elvaria. His red eyes burned. "The dragon princess has awakened," he hissed. "Then let the hunt begin." The journey to the cave of echoing flames was perilous. Firewind flew above jagged peaks, diving through heavy clouds and snow-laced winds, while Alindra held tightly to his back. The air grew colder, but the fire within her heart pulsed steadily, keeping her warm. Below them, the land became rugged and barren. No trees grew, no animals stirred, only silence and stone. When they reached a shadowed ridge carved into the mountain's face, Firewind landed silently. "This is the place," he rumbled. "The cave where Dragonkind remembers." Alindra dismounted, her boots crunching against old gravel. Before her loomed a towering stone archway carved with runes that shimmered faintly in the dark. The entrance was sealed by an enormous door covered in ancient symbols, some that flickered with firelight, others that glowed icy blue. "What is this place really?" she asked, stepping closer. Firewind lowered his head solemnly. "This is where the memories of our kind are kept. Every bond, every battle, every betrayal. The fire within these walls burns with the truth of ages." Alindra reached out. Her pendant and the dragon scale glowed brighter, and the runes on the door responded, shifting, spinning, forming a symbol that matched the pendant. The door cracked open with a deep groan. Inside, the air was warm and thick with smoke. The walls shimmered with liquid light, like veins of molten gold, and the floor was etched with patterns that pulsed under her feet as she walked. "This place feels alive," she whispered. Firewind nodded. "Because it is. The fire remembers. And it will test you." They stepped deeper into the cavern. Flickering flames danced in braziers without wood. Pools of glowing water reflected visions that changed with each glance. Shadows formed dragons mid-flight, humans wielding flame, and towers rising and falling. At the center of the cave stood a circular platform surrounded by a ring of flame. Firewind stepped back. "This is your trial. Step into the circle, and the fire will reveal what lies within you, your strength, your fear, your truth." Alindra hesitated. "And if I fail, then the flame will turn away from you," he said. "And the bond may be lost forever." Her breath caught, but she nodded. "I'm ready." She stepped into the ring. At once, the fire roared to life. The flames shot up around her, forming a dome. She was alone, enclosed in a sphere of flame. Then the visions began. She saw herself as a child, eyes glowing as she lit a candle with her breath. Her mother, Queen Seralith, watching with a mix of fear and love. She saw herself standing before the nobles, listening to whispers, "She's cursed, she's a monster," their words slicing her spirit. Then the scene changed. She stood before a mirror. But the reflection wasn't her. It was a version of her twisted by fear, her skin scaled, her eyes glowing red, her hands ablaze. "You are the fire," the reflection said. "You will destroy them all." "No," Alindra whispered. "I am not destruction. You are a dragon in disguise," it hissed. "You don't belong to either world." Alindra clenched her fists. "I don't need to belong to one. I will make my own place." The fire roared, and suddenly, the mirror shattered. A new vision emerged, Alindra standing before humans and dragons, united under a sky streaked with light. Her hand rested on Firewind's head, her pendant glowing like a star. Then everything went dark, and the voice of the cave spoke, not in words, but in warmth. "She is worthy." The flames around her lowered. Alindra stepped out of the ring, her eyes brighter than ever. Firewind bowed his head. "You have passed the trial of remembrance. The fire has accepted you, not as a tool, not as a threat, but as a bridge." From the cavern walls, flames danced into the air and gathered above Alindra's hands, forming a golden orb. It hovered for a moment, then sank into her chest. She gasped, not in pain, but in clarity. "What was that?" she asked. "The Flameheart," Firewind replied. "The purest essence of the bond. Now you carry the legacy of every rider before you. And with it, the strength to face the betrayer." As they turned to leave the cave, a ripple of darkness crept along the edge of the cavern walls. Far away, the betrayer felt it, the light of the Flameheart awakening. He stood atop the ruins of a burned-out village, a black banner fluttering behind him. "She's stronger than I expected," he hissed. Behind him, creatures cloaked in smoke slithered from the shadows, beasts born of fire, twisted by hatred. The betrayer raised his staff. "Let the hunt begin." The sky shattered. Flame and lightning split the heavens as Alindra's golden fire collided with the betrayer's storm of crimson rage. The air itself screamed, torn between two ancient powers, one born of hope, the other of hatred. They stood at the heart of the storm, on a jagged mountaintop that trembled under their clash. Around them, the sky spun in wild spirals of light and shadow. You fight for a world that will never accept you. The betrayer roared, his voice echoing through the mountains. No, Alindra answered, her voice steady. I fight for a world that must learn to change. The betrayer lifted his staff, and the shadows obeyed. Ghostly forms swirled around him, fragments of ancient dragons corrupted by rage, humans lost to fear, old memories twisted into weapons. They cast me out, he cried, feared my bond with the Flameheart. Just as they feared you. Alindra's flame flared brighter. I was afraid, she said. But I am not anymore. She raised her hands, and the dragon stone pulsed with living fire. Images burst from the flames, her mother's embrace, her bond with Firewind, the smiles of villagers she had helped, the forgotten dragon songs whispered in dreams. Each memory became a thread of light, weaving around her like armor. You fight with anger, she said. But I stand with love. With a cry, the betrayer unleashed a storm of dark fire. Alindra countered with a beam of golden flame. The storm exploded. Far below, the battle raged on. Firewind and Vorthar clashed again and again, their roars shaking the earth. Vorthar's claws were dipped in venomous shadow, but Firewind's heart burned brighter with every strike. You were once a guardian like me. Firewind growled. I was betrayed. Vorthar spat. No, you were loved. Firewind answered, slamming into him with a blast of pure flame. Across the fields, Queen Sarilith rallied her troops, holding the final line. Knights and mages stood side by side, defying the Ashborn hordes even as their numbers thinned. Suddenly, the clouds above twisted into a massive eye of fire. And from the center, two figures fell, locked in magical combat. Alindra and the betrayer struck the ground hard, dust and ash swirling in every direction. She rolled to her feet, coughing, but stood tall. The betrayer rose, slower. His mask cracked. His eyes, red, once blazing with fury, now flickered with something else, pain. You still don't see, he whispered. They'll always fear what burns too brightly. Then I'll burn brighter, Alindra said. She stepped forward, and the ground trembled beneath her feet. The dragon stone unleashed a wave of pure golden fire, sweeping outward like a starburst. It struck the betrayer, piercing his shadows, his illusions, his pain. And beneath all of it, she saw him. A young man once full of hope. A guardian who had wanted peace. A soul consumed by fear and rejection. He sank to his knees. It was never supposed to be this way, he whispered, the fire draining from his limbs. Alindra knelt before him. It's not too late, she said softly. You can let go. He looked at her, eyes wide. You, forgive me, I forgive who you once were, she said. But you must release the shadow. Tears slipped down his cheeks. And with a shuddering breath, the staff in his hand shattered. The last of the dark fire rose into the air, and dissolved into light. The storm above broke, the sky turned blue. Across the battlefield, the Ashborn screamed, and began to crumble into ash. Their connection to the betrayer's hatred was severed. Vorthar paused mid-battle, confused. Firewind hovered nearby, cautious. Alindra stepped toward the black dragon. You can be free too, she said. She raised her hands, and the dragon stone pulsed again. Golden light wrapped around Vorthar, encircling him gently. The shadow in his scales hissed and sizzled, retreating like mist at sunrise. Vorthar roared, not in pain, but in release. His eyes, once dripping blood, now glistened with gold. He turned to Firewind, and bowed. Firewind nodded in return. By nightfall, the war was over. Elvaria's skies were clear. The people gathered in the valley, wounded but alive. Queen Sarilith stood beside her daughter, who held the dragon stone high. Dragons circled overhead, not in fear, but in honor. The betrayer, no longer masked, stood far behind, silent, watching. He would be judged by the people, but not with hate. He had chosen to stop the war, and Alindra had chosen to forgive. Together, the queen and the dragon princess stepped forward. To all who doubted peace between dragon and human, Sarilith declared, let this day be a beginning. Cheers rose across the field. Children ran toward the dragons. Riders dismounted to help the wounded. The world was not healed, but it had hope. And in the quiet that followed, Firewind turned to Alindra. The flameheart burns brightest in those who carry not rage, but love. Alindra smiled. I am ready for what comes next. The sky shattered. Flame and lightning split the heavens as Alindra's golden fire collided with the betrayer's storm of crimson rage. The air itself screamed, torn between two ancient powers, one born of hope, the other of hatred. They stood at the heart of the storm, on a jagged mountaintop that trembled under their clash. Around them, the sky spun in wild spirals of light and shadow. You fight for a world that will never accept you. The betrayer roared, his voice echoing through the mountains. No, Alindra answered, her voice steady. I fight for a world that must learn to change. The betrayer lifted his staff, and the shadows obeyed. Ghostly forms swirled around him, fragments of ancient dragons corrupted by rage, humans lost to fear, old memories twisted into weapons. They cast me out, he cried, feared my bond with the Flameheart. Just as they feared you. Alindra's flame flared brighter. I was afraid, she said. But I am not anymore. She raised her hands, and the dragon stone pulsed with living fire. Images burst from the flames, her mother's embrace, her bond with Firewind, the smiles of villagers she had helped, the forgotten dragon songs whispered in dreams. Each memory became a thread of light, weaving around her like armor. You fight with anger, she said. But I stand with love. With a cry, the betrayer unleashed a storm of dark fire. Alindra countered with a beam of golden flame. The storm exploded. Far below, the battle raged on. Firewind and Vorthar clashed again and again, their roars shaking the earth. Vorthar's claws were dipped in venomous shadow, but Firewind's heart burned brighter with every strike. You were once a guardian like me. Firewind growled. I was betrayed. Vorthar spat. No, you were loved. Firewind answered, slamming into him with a blast of pure flame. Across the fields, Queen Sarilith rallied her troops, holding the final line. Knights and mages stood side by side, defying the Ashborn hordes even as their numbers thinned. Suddenly, the clouds above twisted into a massive eye of fire. And from the center, two figures fell, locked in magical combat. Alindra and the betrayer struck the ground hard, dust and ash swirling in every direction. She rolled to her feet, coughing, but stood tall. The betrayer rose, slower. His mask cracked. His eyes, red, once blazing with fury, now flickered with something else, pain. You still don't see, he whispered. They'll always fear what burns too brightly. Then I'll burn brighter, Alindra said. She stepped forward, and the ground trembled beneath her feet. The dragon stone unleashed a wave of pure golden fire, sweeping outward like a starburst. It struck the betrayer, piercing his shadows, his illusions, his pain. And beneath all of it, she saw him. A young man once full of hope. A guardian who had wanted peace. A soul consumed by fear and rejection. He sank to his knees. It was never supposed to be this way, he whispered, the fire draining from his limbs. Alindra knelt before him. It's not too late, she said softly. You can let go. He looked at her, eyes wide. You, forgive me, I forgive who you once were, she said. But you must release the shadow. Tears slipped down his cheeks. And with a shuddering breath, the staff in his hand shattered. The last of the dark fire rose into the air, and dissolved into light. The storm above broke, the sky turned blue. Across the battlefield, the Ashborn screamed, and began to crumble into ash. Their connection to the betrayer's hatred was severed. Vorthar paused mid-battle, confused. Firewind hovered nearby, cautious. Alindra stepped toward the black dragon. You can be free too, she said. She raised her hands, and the dragon stone pulsed again. Golden light wrapped around Vorthar, encircling him gently. The shadow in his scales hissed and sizzled, retreating like mist at sunrise. Vorthar roared, not in pain, but in release. His eyes, once dripping blood, now glistened with gold. He turned to Firewind, and bowed. Firewind nodded in return. By nightfall, the war was over. Elvaria's skies were clear. The people gathered in the valley, wounded but alive. Queen Sarilith stood beside her daughter, who held the dragon stone high. Dragons circled overhead, not in fear, but in honor. The betrayer, no longer masked, stood far behind, silent, watching. He would be judged by the people, but not with hate. He had chosen to stop the war, and Alindra had chosen to forgive. Together, the queen and the dragon princess stepped forward. To all who doubted peace between dragon and human, Sarilith declared, let this day be a beginning. Cheers rose across the field. Children ran toward the dragons. Riders dismounted to help the wounded. The world was not healed, but it had hope. And in the quiet that followed, Firewind turned to Alindra. The flameheart burns brightest in those who carry not rage, but love. Alindra smiled. I am ready for what comes next. Weeks had passed since the final battle. The once charred fields of Elvaria bloomed again. Flowers sprouted from the ashes. The rivers ran clear, and for the first time in generations, the song of dragons echoed across the skies without fear. But the scars of war had not been forgotten. Villages were rebuilt stone by stone. Families mourned those lost, and in the center of it all stood Princess Alindra, no longer the secret girl with dragon eyes, but the bridge between two worlds, crowned by courage and compassion. On the morning of the Unity Festival, the kingdom gathered at the palace steps. The ceremony was unlike any before. Knights in silver armor stood beside dragons with glistening scales. Magicians, farmers, healers, and riders formed a single circle around the Flameheart fountain, newly carved in Alindra's honor. Above them all, a banner flew high. A dragon and a dove, wings entwined in peace. Queen Serylith stepped forward, her gaze proud yet tearful. "My people," she said, her voice strong, "we once feared what we did not understand. We once pushed away what we could not control. But my daughter has taught me, and all of us, that the fire within is not to be feared, but to be guided." She turned to Alindra. "Kneel, child of flame." Alindra bowed. Firewind stood behind her, his golden wings casting light across the crowd. Queen Serylith raised a circlet of gold and crystal. "By the will of Elvaria, by the wisdom of dragons, and by the courage you have shown, I crown you not just as princess of this land, but as the dragon princess of peace, guardian of the Flameheart." The crown was placed upon her head. The dragon stone glowed, and the people rose in thunderous cheer. Later, on the castle balcony, Alindra looked out across the kingdom. Children rode on the backs of young dragons. Markets buzzed with laughter. Songs floated through the air. Beside her, Firewind let out a long breath. "Do you feel it?" he asked. "Yes," she said, smiling. "For the first time, the fire is calm." A beat of silence. "Will it stay that way?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, shadows will rise again. People will forget. Dragons may be feared once more. But now, we have a bond stronger than any fear. We have each other." Firewind's great head lowered in a nod. "And what of the betrayer?" he asked gently. Alindra turned to the distant tower on the mountain, where the former guardian now lived in quiet exile. "He lives under the watch of both humans and dragons," she said. "Not to be punished, but to heal. Maybe one day, he'll return not as an enemy, but as a teacher." Firewind huffed in agreement. "A wise choice, princess." She chuckled. "Call me Alindra. Titles are for ceremonies. My fire belongs to the people." She stepped forward and raised her hand. The crowd below looked up. From her palm, a spiral of golden flame soared into the sky, forming the image of a dragon curled around a heart. It shimmered for a moment, then burst into a shower of sparks that fell like glowing petals. A symbol, a promise. The age of the dragon princess had begun. In the years that followed, schools opened where dragons taught wisdom beside human mentors. The sky became a road, not a battleground. Flame was used to heal, not destroy. And the dragon stone, held safely by Alindra, became a beacon for all who struggled to understand the fire within. From distant kingdoms came messengers, seeking peace. And from forgotten caves came dragons, ready to trust again. Alindra traveled far and wide, across deserts, oceans, even to islands where dragons had slept for centuries. Wherever she went, she lit fires, not on rooftops, but in hearts. The world changed, because one girl refused to let fear define her. Because one dragon chose love over war. Because the flame that once divided, now united. Glowing star, the end glowing star. Brain moral lesson. True power is not in what sets us apart, but in what brings us together. Alindra teaches us that courage comes from embracing who we truly are. When we lead with love and compassion, even when others fear us, we become the light that can change the world. For more motivation stories, please like and subscribe this channel. Thanks and God bless.